I was 20 years old, and I was sitting in a doctor's office. And she said to me, take 4 Advil before it even starts, and then 2 more every 6 hours after that until it's done. I was there, again, to talk to her about how painful my periods were. I was in so much agony, I couldn't get out of bed 1 or 2 days every time. And she said, unfortunately, that's just how it is for some people. So what you need to do is you need to take medication as soon as possible. You need to get in front of the pain. The more pain you have, the harder it is to come back from, so try to get in front of the pain. And so I walked out of the doctor's office that day and I thought, I guess this is just what I have to live with in my life, and no need to respect the dosage instructions on the back of Advil. Just take as much as you need. When I was 27 years old, I was back in the doctor's office because I started getting migraines before I would get every period. And she said, that happens. That happens to people. It's hormonal. Some people just have to live with that. I'm going to give you some medication. It would be best if you figured out when the migraine was going to come on and take the medication as soon as possible, because you need to get in front of the pain, because the higher your pain is, the harder it's to come back from. So you need to take the medication as soon as possible. And so I figured it out. I started taking that medication. I could tell a migraine was going to come on. I would take the medication. It would work. And it was just another piece of the fact that I was somebody who struggled with pain, and that was how it is for some people. In my late 20s, I met my husband. In my early 30s, I had babies. I had 3, including a set of twins. And it actually was one of the things that was pretty easy for me. I got pregnant fairly easily, and I found labor and delivery okay. I said to somebody, I was like, yeah, like it hurt, but like it's not like significantly more painful than like a bad period. So that's just kind of how I lived my life. There was just a lot of times every month I'm trying to stay in front of the pain. I'm trying to stay in front of the pain. And then one May in 2019, I was lying in bed because it was the first day of my period, which means exhausted, like to the bone exhausted, well medicated, but still quite uncomfortable. When all of a sudden, I got the worst cramp I had ever had in my life. The only way that I could figure out how to describe it to people was to say it felt like a Charlie horse in my uterus that lasted for half an hour without rest. I'm not somebody who cries a lot. I'm not somebody who asks for help a lot. And I remember calling my mom while this was happening. I said, I don't know what's happening to me. And it was painful enough that I was like, I can't do the things I need to do, right? Like I'm somebody who's like, yeah, I have a lot of like sort of sickly moments and I don't feel well, but like I'm gonna do what I need to do. And in that day, I was like, I can't drive, it's dangerous. What if this happens again? I can't take my kid to drama. And I called a friend, I was like, can you come and help me? And she came immediately, no questions asked. And she saw me, she came to the door, she said, you look gray. You need to go lie down. A few hours later, my husband is now home from work, and it hits again, and he finds me in our room, folded over our bed. So I'm standing up, and I'm folded over, sobbing, and just trying to use the pressure of the bed to hopefully alleviate some of the pain that I have going on. And he looks at me, he says, do you think you should go to the hospital? And I said, no. Like, there's no point. It's just how it is for some people. They go through a lot of pain. I'm going to spend 8 hours, nothing's going to happen. But I agreed at that point that if it happened a third time, I would go to the hospital. And the logic I used was, all right, it'd be stupid if this was something else and I died. So around midnight, it hit again. My kids were too little, they were sleeping. I couldn't, so my husband couldn't drive me, and I was like, I'm not calling an ambulance, that would be embarrassing. And so I took an Uber, which was the longest, most uncomfortable chit-chat I've ever had in my life. And I spent 8 hours at the hospital, where they eventually, after a long time, gave me some IV pain medication. They did some ultrasounds, and at the end they said, yeah, you have some pretty big cysts on your ovaries, you should see your doctor. So, as expected, yeah, this happens to some people. About 5 weeks later, I had an appointment with a brand new OBGYN that had already been set up. So I was like, perfect, I'm going to ask about this. She walked in, she was very formal, very proper. She sat down, and I said, since I first got this referral, this has happened to me. Not only was I in that pain, my period has not stopped since. I have not had a pain-free day in 5 weeks. So she looked at the report from the hospital, and she said, oh, you have endometriosis. I said, oh, okay. I thought that caused infertility, and I got pregnant, okay, and I thought that was something that you had your whole life, not something that developed in your 40s. She said, well, have you always had painful periods? I was like, yes. She said, well, then you probably just have a high pain tolerance. I was like, oh, okay. So she said, I'm going to give you this medication. I said, is it a hormone-based medication? Because they tend to make me feel pretty bad. And she's like, yep, but that's what you're going to take. Okay. She said, if it doesn't work in 3 months, you can come back and we'll do a hysterectomy. And I said, oh, hysterectomy. Can we do that now? I am done with everything in here. Go for it, out you go. And she said, no, you're going to take this medication for 3 months and try it. You can also take Advil. I recommend that you take it early. Try and get in front of the pain. Thanks, lady. So I walked out of her office and I knew 2 things. One, I was never going back to that doctor. She was terrible. I also thought, all right, I have endometriosis. I need to figure out what that means. So I did what I do and I went, Facebook, hello friends. Tell me everything you know about endometriosis. And I got amazing resources, and I did a lot of research, and I found support groups and all kinds of things, and I figured out what the right treatment would be for me. And I figured out that a lot of people have endometriosis that don't talk about it, and that a lot of people suffer in pain and really struggle to get support. I found out that one of the best doctors in Canada, his name Dr. Singh, is in Ottawa, which is where I live. And that's good news, except for the fact that he's really hard to get in to see. So I got a referral, and I got an appointment, but it was 7 months away. And I was still in daily pain. I ended up in the ER 2 more times with pain bad enough that every time, so you go into the ER, they ask you what your pain level is, and every time I'd be like, can I change my answer from last time? Because now we've got a new 10. And I talked to my family doctor, and I said, I cannot wait 7 months to see this doctor, and if I have to wait, I need you to prescribe opioids. I need narcotics. I cannot keep going. I know that's not ideal, but I can't keep going. And a week later, I got a call from Dr. Singh's office, and they said, we have an appointment for you in September. So that was a month away. I said, how? What? Yes? Thank you? How? What happened? She said, you need to thank your doctor. She called and really went to bat for you. So that September, I went in. This time I brought my mother with me. I had 6 pages of documentation around everything that had happened to me throughout my life. I was ready to get what I needed. And Dr. Singh walked in and just had this friendly smile and kind eyes. And he said, I've looked at all your imaging. You absolutely need a hysterectomy. I'm going to try to save your ovaries. I don't think I can. Unfortunately, the wait for an operating room is a year. And I said, I can't wait a year. And he said, I know. But I can't do anything else. I don't have access. He then told me the amount of pain medication I was taking was dangerous, and I was going to burn a hole in my stomach. And he tried to give me some different medication. He said, if it stays this bad, come back. So a month later, I was back. And that day when he walked in, the kind eyes were gone and he looked tired. And he said, why are you back? You were here a month ago. And I said, you told me if I was still taking that much pain medication to get in touch, so I did. And he looked at all my new imaging and he said, you need a hysterectomy. If I could, I would do it tomorrow, but I don't have the resources. Maybe call your MP, call the hospital board. Like, I don't have the resources, which is what so many people face when they're trying to get help. So there wasn't anything for me to do. So I left, and 2 weeks later, I got a call. This is now mid-October, and it was Dr. Singh's office. And they said, I'm calling to schedule your hysterectomy for November 25th. I was like, what? She said, Dr. Singh asked me to call around to all the other surgeons and ask them if they could give us some of their OR time. And I found some. There was about 4 weeks between when she called and that surgery happened. And I just said, thank you. And tears were streaming down my face because it felt like finally somebody heard me, and finally somebody was going to help me actually get rid of that pain. Thank you.